Hello. How's everybody doing? Hopefully you're doing well. Hanging in there at least as good as you could. And welcome to Exposed News Outlet, where we shed light on topics that matter most. I'm your host, Andrea. Today, we're exploring Putin's puppet, the tyrannical, deplorable cultist Trump, and his nearly 80-year-old unhinged mental breakdown in the Oval Office that was tag-teamed by Shady Vance, who is more like a devious cheerleader and pathological liar than any title he currently holds. He is incapable of feeling empathy, compassion, or even shame, sadly. And these people are all raging narcissists, by the way, and literally psychopaths, incapable of feeling anything other than themselves. But as we navigate the complexities of our world, it's essential to stay informed and engaged by subscribing to our channel, enabling notifications, and sharing our content. You're supporting our mission to provide thought-provoking insights and inspire positive change. Thank you for being a part of our community. Also, for those who are able to help out for resources and technology expansion, I will link my GoFundMe link, and it actually has a description on what it would be used for as well. So thank you, it means a lot. And again, for those of you who aren't able to, if you could please subscribe to my channel if you're not already subscribed, and like the video if you enjoy it. Also, give me your thoughts. Don't be shy. Thank you. Without further ado, let's get to the video. Trump's latest antics have sparked outrage and concern. In a shocking display, he yelled at Ukrainian President Zelensky and made baseless accusations that he's repeated now for the better part of 8 years. He then canceled the press conference, dodging accountability and scrutiny like the coward that he is. This behavior is unacceptable for a world leader, especially when dealing with a country like Ukraine, which is fighting for its own sovereignty and territorial integrity. President Zelensky has shown remarkable resilience and diplomacy in the face of Russian aggression. His commitment to finding a peaceful resolution to the conflict is admirable, and it's disappointing that Trump didn't engage in a more constructive and respectful dialogue. The international community must continue to support Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity while promoting diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict peacefully. Donald Trump's reluctance to speak the truth, especially regarding his conversations with Vladimir Putin, has also been a recurring concern. His evasive response, he doesn't want to say, when asked about discussing Ukraine with Putin, is particularly troubling. This lack of transparency raises questions about Trump's commitment to honesty and accountability. As the President of the United States, it's essential for him to maintain transparency, especially when it comes to sensitive topics like international relations. Trump's behavior has sparked criticism from various quarters, with many arguing that his secrecy undermines the trust and credibility of the presidency. Moreover, his reluctance to disclose information about his conversations with Putin has fueled concerns about potential conflicts of interest or even collusion, and this wouldn't be the first time either. This issue is further complicated by Trump's history of spreading misinformation and contradicting himself. This has led to a breakdown in trust between the president and the public, making it increasingly difficult to discern fact from fiction. Ultimately, Trump's refusal to provide straightforward answers about his conversations with Putin is unacceptable and erodes the public's faith in the presidency altogether. As a leader, it's essential for him to prioritize transparency, honesty, and accountability, all characteristics that he's never, ever obtained. Watch this clip of Chris Hayes where Trump and Vance unhinged breakdown. Literally 25th Amendment worthy moment. Watch this clip.
Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Today, Donald Trump irreparably destroyed the 80-year-old post-World War II international order. His total abandonment of Ukraine in front of the cameras was on display for the entire world to see. It was a truly historic moment, not in the good way. One that I fear realigned the world order, upending the only foreign policy consensus that most living Americans and Europeans have ever known. Today's Oval Office meeting started to turn ugly when Trump apparently thought that Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky was not being deferential enough to Russian President Vladimir Putin.
I really count on your strong position to stop Putin, and you said that enough with the war. I think that is very important, Ben, to say these words to Putin at the very beginning of war, because he's a killer and terrorist. But I hope that together we can stop him.
I'm aligned with the world, and I want to get this thing over with. You see the hatred he's got for Putin. It's very tough for me to make a deal with that kind of hate. He's got tremendous hatred.
It only got worse from there as Trump and his vice president lashed out against Zelensky in the Oval Office. We're going to play all 7 minutes of that exchange. It happened earlier today. A lot of people at work, and you've probably seen clips. But the context here is important. Everyone should see how the president and vice president of the United States conducted themselves on the world stage.
He broke this ceasefire. He killed our people, and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military? And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems, even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's exactly
Remember
what you're
this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. But right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's back to you, far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once? This entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you? You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you can...
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country's in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't been
in this
alone.
cabinet.
You haven't been alone.
In this cabinet.
We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military equipment, and your men are brave, but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have our military equipment, if you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over In 2 weeks.
In 3 days. I heard it from Putin. In 3 days. This is something
maybe
new.
Less.
In 2 weeks. Of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this.
Again,
I tell you.
Just say thank you.
I said a lot of times
that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards. You're buried there. Your people are dying. You're running low on soldiers. Listen, you're running low on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing. And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look. If you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
With guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't with me. That wasn't with me. That was with a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person. That was with Obama.
It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
One more question to Mr. Vice President. I'm sorry.
It's going to be a tough deal to make because the attitudes have to change.
What if Russia breaks ceasefire? What if Russia breaks peace talks? What do you do then? I understand that it's a heated conversation right now.
What are you saying?
She's asking, what if Russia breaks the ceasefire?
What if anything? What if a bomb drops on your head right now? Okay? What if they broke it? I don't know. They broke it with Biden because Biden, they didn't respect him. They didn't respect Obama. They respect me. Let me tell you, Putin went through a hell of a lot with me. He went through a phony witch hunt where they used him and Russia. You ever hear of that deal? That was a phony Hunter Biden, Joe Biden scam. Hillary Clinton, Shifty Adam Schiff. It was a Democrat scam. And he had to go through that. And he did go through it. We didn't end up in a war. And he went through it. He was accused of all that stuff. He had nothing to do with it. It came out of Hunter Biden's bathroom. It came out of Hunter Biden's bedroom. It was disgusting. And then they said, oh, the laptop from hell was made by Russia, the 51 agents. The whole thing was a scam. And he had to put up with that. He was being accused of all that stuff. All I can say is this. He might have broken deals with Obama and Bush, and he might have broken them with Biden. He did, maybe. Maybe he didn't. I don't know what happened. But he didn't break them with me. He wants to make a deal. I don't know if you can make a deal. The problem is, I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing. All right, I think we've seen enough. What do you think? Huh?
J.D. Vance accused Zelensky of being disrespectful. You heard the whole exchange. What do you think was being disrespectful? I don't think it's hyperbole to say we as a country have never quite seen anything like this particularly appalling spectacle before. Once the meeting concluded, President Zelensky was kicked out of the White House without even signing the rare earth mineral deal. That's the deal that Trump wanted him to sign. He's been trying to bully him into signing to give away resources. It's the deal that Trump kept calling a raw earth deal. Trump wanted him to strong-arm him into joining on the deal and signing the deal at the White House today. That was the cost of U.S. support. Give us your minerals. We take, and then maybe we'll see what we can do for you. A planned joint press conference between him and President Trump was abruptly canceled. In later remarks to reporters today, Trump let slip the real reason he kicked Zelensky out today.
He doesn't have to stand there and say about Putin this, Putin that, all negative things. He's got to say, I want to make peace. I don't want to fight a war any longer.
He got upset because he was saying negative things about Donald Trump's buddy, mentor, something else, Vladimir Putin. That's what happened. Or, alternately, another way that today looks to me on its face is that it was a planned ambush to effectively jettison Ukraine and complete the switching of sides of the U.S. in line with, again, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance's Russia first views. They like Russia. They want the U.S. to be more like Russia. They like Vladimir Putin. They don't like democratic countries. Predictably, Donald Trump's Republican toadies practically tripped over themselves to be the first to lavish praise on this morning's embarrassing display. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who was rather quiet during much of the meeting, sitting there sullenly on the couch, found his voice on social media posting, "Thank you, POTUS, for standing up for America in a way that no president has ever had the courage to do before. Thank you for putting America first. America is with you." Meanwhile, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, who earlier this month, and I mean like a few weeks ago, on tape in front of the whole world, called Zelensky the ally he, quote, been hoping for all my life, is now also apparently on Team Russia.
I've never been more proud of President Trump for showing the American people in the world you don't trifle with this man. JD was awesome. This was a missed opportunity. And the question for me, for the Ukrainian people, I don't know if Zelensky can ever get you to where you want to go with the United States. Either he dramatically changes or you need to get somebody new. If I were him, I would profusely apologize to the way he treated our president and the vice president in the Oval Office. I don't know if you can repair the damage. I don't know if you can ever do a deal with Zelensky anymore.
Let's be clear here. There is a lot, so much to criticize about the past 80 years of American foreign policy. I've been doing a lot of that criticizing myself for most of my time as a professional journalist, commentator. What Donald Trump is building in its wake right now, in front of all of us, with these actions, he's doing things. It's not just words. Where the United States partners itself with authoritarian regimes, sides with Vladimir Putin, against democratic allies, is undoubtedly worse than what we had before. This will have massive consequences for global politics for decades to come. The American-European alliance is effectively over. The North Star of the post-war order, where the United States' strongest alliances are with fellow democracies over authoritarian regimes, has ended. 80 years of diplomacy, born of ashes and 35 million dead, undone by one and a half men today. I think it makes America weaker, definitely, more vulnerable. It is going to make the world more dangerous as a result, no question. We're already seeing our European allies scramble to fill the void. Leaders from France and Ireland, Latvia, Lithuania, Netherlands, Norway, Poland, Portugal, Spain, and Sweden, among others, immediately issued strong statements of support for the Ukrainian people who were invaded and have been shot at and getting killed by Russian soldiers. It appears they, too, are waking up to the stark reality that America, under Donald Trump, will no longer be a leader on the world stage.
It seems that Trump and J.D. Vance are going to continue to push a misleading narrative about the U.S. supporting Ukraine. They're claiming that the U.S. has lost significant amounts of money due to this support. But what they're not mentioning is that the money appropriated by Congress was used to purchase weapons from American companies, which actually boosted the U.S. economy. Moreover, the Ukrainians have been quite successful in their defense against Russia, with significantly lower casualties compared to Russia. According to reports, Ukraine has lost around 46,000 soldiers sadly. While Russia's losses are estimated to be well over 800,000. It's also worth noting that Trump and Vance's rhetoric has been criticized for being pro-Russian and undermining European security. European leaders have expressed concerns about the U.S.'s shifting stance on Ukraine, with some even warning against appeasing Russia. In a recent speech at the Munich Security Conference, J.D. Vance criticized European Union leaders in a patronizing speech for backsliding on freedom. I just can't even. For backsliding on freedom of speech and democracy. However, many see this as a divisionary tactic to shift attention away from the U.S.'s own questionable actions regarding Ukraine and its own democracy back home, as in our democracy. It seems like Trump and Zelensky are engaging in a war of words. Trump's statements suggest that Zelensky lacks leverage or advantages in the ongoing conflict with Russia. However, Zelensky's response, "We're not playing cards," implies that the situation is more complex and can't be reduced to a simple game of cards. Not to mention that as the president and defender of his own sovereign country, he actually was invaded by Russia. Russia is the aggressor. They have no business fighting Ukraine. They're the ones that need to end the war. They're the ones that Trump should be yelling at, not cozying up to and saying that he knows some nice Russian oligarchs. The last thing we need is more corrupt millionaires here, and he wants to bring them here. Watch this clip with Nicole Wallace and former Ambassador Susan Rice.
You're not acting grateful enough. You're not being thankful. Donald Trump to the leader of Ukraine. Joining our ongoing coverage, former United States Ambassador to the United Nations, former National Security Advisor to President Obama, Ambassador Susan Rice is here. Ambassador, your reaction.
Well, Nicole, obviously it's a very sad day and an embarrassment for the United States on the world stage. But let's step back and analyze what's happened here. I think there's no question that this was a setup. You heard Donald Trump say at the end of that clip you played, this is great television. This was a setup. Vladimir Zelensky was compelled to agree to a horrible deal that would have sent Ukraine's minerals to the United States without any concrete security guarantees. And yet, because he was trying to improve a relationship with Donald Trump, he came to Washington, he came to the Oval Office and sat down for a meeting, hat in hand. And soon after he got there, the vice president of the United States lit into him and started a confrontation. Now, I've been in countless Oval Office meetings with heads of state, presidents and vice presidents, as National Security Advisor, as UN Ambassador, and in other roles. I can tell you that the vice president or the secretary of state or anybody else, they don't jump in, hijack a conversation without the express blessing of the president of the United States. So J.D. Vance did that deliberately. Donald Trump knew what he was going to do. And I think, as he said at the end, because he can't, help himself, this was a setup for the cameras. It was a play to his base. But above all, it was a play to Vladimir Putin, to show fealty to Vladimir Putin, and to try to humiliate Zelensky. But Zelensky didn't play along with the script, because Zelensky's got dignity and guts. And Zelensky has people that he democratically represents. And as a result, he couldn't sit there in silence as lies were being told about how the war was started, whose responsibility it was, et cetera, et cetera. And he tried to explain what is in fact the case. To suggest that he was not thankful, I can't count the number of times that Zelensky has thanked the American people, the American government, the President of the United States for the critical support that we've provided. It's not about gratitude. It was an effort to humiliate him, to scuttle the U.S.-Ukraine relationship so that Trump no longer feels any obligation to provide support, and to hand U.S. interests and Ukraine and potentially Europe to Putin on a silver platter.
Why?
That's a great question. Yeah, Nicole, I think we have to understand that what happened today is really a piece of a larger puzzle. We've seen this building, frankly, since before the Trump returned to office. But literally, so much of what he has done in his first 5 weeks in office have been to the benefit of Russia and China. So let's review the bidding. Threatening our ally, Denmark and Greenland. Starting a trade war with our closest allies and partners. Trying to, create a conflict with Canada and trying to pretend to relegate it to the 51st state. Vance going to Munich and basically trying to blow up the NATO alliance. Pulling the United States Agency for International Development 100% off the map and retreating. Proposing to cut 8% a year from the Department of Defense and literally dismantling the federal government and eviscerating it. That is not in any way, shape, or form in the national security interests of the United States. We are not only alone and alienated from our closest allies in Europe and Asia, as we heard from Turnbull, but worse, we have aligned ourselves completely with Russia, who is aligned with China, North Korea, and Iran. So in 5 weeks, we flipped the script, and we are dangerously isolated and cast our lot with adversaries who truly do not have our interests at heart.
Andrew Nastios, who was the head of USAID for George W. Bush, was on the program and made the argument that USAID keeps us safe it kept us safe from another 9/11 in the years after 9/11, because by stemming catastrophe and human suffering, you also counter extremism in some of the most brutal and hostile corners of the globe. That aid isn't just philanthropic, which seems to be Donald Trump's misunderstanding of it, that aid is one of our most mighty soft power tools, not just for ending human suffering, but for keeping us safe here. Another person described this as the worst 24 hours in modern American history, that we dismantle programs to spare children from dying of malaria and measles, mumps, preventable deaths and diseases, and we dismantle the World Alliance. What is Trump's end game if you're an adversary or an ally looking at everything he's doing?
I think his end game is to undermine the security and stability of the United States. And that brings us back to the question that you asked earlier. Why? There's no other way to look at this in sum, Nicole, than to see that this is a deliberate and comprehensive weakening of the United States in very short order, from a security point of view, from an economic point of view, from a diplomatic point of view, all to the benefit of our principal adversaries, Russia primarily, and China. And so I think the sooner the American people understand what this is about, what this is what's at stake, the clearer we can be. Now, Vladimir Putin is not popular in the United States. 80% of Americans understand him to be the vicious, cruel dictator that he is. But I'd love to hear more than one Republican in Congress stand up and say that this is not who the United States is. This is not what we signed up for. And more importantly, this is not making America safer. It's, in fact, making us weaker and shrinking in the world. And it is going to make every American less safe.
This exchange highlights the tense relationship between Trump and Zelensky, with the Ukrainian president pushing back against Trump's criticism, and he should. That was an unfair attack on Trump's part, and Trump had this planned, clearly. That's why he brought his cheerleader out there. And there's more to the story too. Zelensky's message also underscores Ukraine's determination to defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity, despite the challenges posed by Russia's aggression. In recent developments, Ukraine has reported some success on the front lines, with President Zelensky praising the actions of the 425th Separate Assault Regiment near the city of Pokrovsk. However, the situation remains fluid, with ongoing fighting and uncertainty about the outcome. Ongoing controversy surrounding Trump's ties to Russia and Putin, as Trump does more of Putin's bidding for him and helps to destroy democracy and destabilize the world. There have been numerous reports and investigations into potential financial links between Trump and Russian interests. Some of these reports suggest that Trump's business dealings with Russian oligarchs and other entities may have created financial obligations or dependencies that could influence his decisions as president. And Trump fights to hide these allegations and repeatedly denied any wrongdoing, as he always does, and cries victim. Putin has repeatedly mocked Trump, and specifically the First Lady Melania, and even displayed naked photos of Melania Trump on Russian state TV. Trump's behavior towards Zelensky and his attempts to spin disinformation and propaganda have been widely reported and criticized. Russia's invasion on Ukraine on February 24th, 2022 was a clear act of aggression, violating Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. This invasion has resulted in significant human suffering, displacement, and loss of life. It's essential to correct the narrative and emphasize that Ukraine is the victim of Russian aggression, not the aggressor. The international community has widely condemned Russian actions, and the efforts to hold Russia accountable for its war crimes are ongoing. Putin's literally a war criminal. Ukraine's right to self-defense is enshrined in international law, and the country has been working to defend its territory and people against Russian aggression. The support of the international community, including economic and military aid, has been crucial in helping Ukraine resist Russian aggression. It's crucial to continue spreading accurate information and correcting the narrative to ensure that the world understands the true nature of this conflict. Trump's behavior towards Ukraine is indeed disturbing, especially considering the country's status as an ally, not a business partner. This isn't the first time Trump's actions have raised concerns about his relationship with Ukraine. He was impeached in his first administration. He was holding military aid and using it as a leverage to pressure Ukraine into investigating Joe Biden. There's plenty of recorded conversations that we all heard, although they tried to erase and whitewash everything. Trump's personal animosity towards Zelensky likely stems from Ukraine's resilience in the face of Russian aggression, which has defied expectations. Zelensky has shown remarkable leadership, and Ukraine has made significant gains on the front lines, including recent success near the city of Pokrovsk. The recent clash between Trump and Zelensky at the White House is a worrying sign of the deteriorating relationship between the two leaders and the European Union and alliance, and over 80 years of history and over 30 million people that have lost their lives fighting for it. Trump's accusations that Zelensky is not ready for peace and his threats to withdraw U.S. support from Ukraine are alarming and just downright evil. This development has significant implications for global politics, particularly in the context of the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia. and the state of European Union. The international community must continue to support Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity while promoting diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict peacefully. Putin's actions have indeed sparked widespread condemnation, with many considering him a war criminal. The International Criminal Court, ICC, has issued arrest warrants for Putin and Maria Lvova, Russia's commissioner for child's rights, for their alleged roles in unlawful deportation and transfer of Ukrainian children to Russia, basically kidnapping. This isn't the first time that Putin has faced criticism for his actions. He's been accused of committing war crimes, including the forced deportation of Ukrainian children, which is considered a crime against humanity under international law. The ICC's arrest warrant has significant implications, as it means that Putin could be arrested and extradited to the ICC if he travels to any of the 125 countries that ratified the Rome Statute. However, Russia has denied the ICC's jurisdiction and has refused to cooperate with the court. Despite the challenges, the ICC arrest warrant is seen as a major step towards holding Putin accountable for his actions. As Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba said, international criminals will be held accountable for stealing children and other international crimes. The mass firings of the Pentagon employees, particularly those in defense, is a highly concerning issue that raises questions about legality, national security, and global stability. Firstly, the firings may violate various federal laws, including the Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification (WARN) Act, which requires employers to provide at least 60 days notice before mass layoffs. Additionally, the Federal Service Labor Management Relations Statute protects federal employees' rights to collective bargaining and due process. Beyond legal implications, these firings would significantly weaken the United States' safety and security. The Pentagon plays a significant role in national defense, and reducing its workforce would compromise its ability to respond to emerging threats. This in turn would embolden authoritarian regimes like Russia, China, and others, potentially destabilizing the global world order. It's also worth noting that USAID, an independent federal agency, works to promote global stability and security by addressing the root causes of extremism and conflict. By weakening the Pentagon's capabilities, these firings would undermine USAID's efforts and create a power vacuum that extremist groups could exploit. The involvement of Trump and his far-right extremists in pushing propaganda and radicalizing Ukraine is a separate but related concern. Using the Oval Office to broadcast propaganda to Russia via TASS and Russian state media is a blatant attempt to distort the truth and undermine democracy. The mass firings of the Pentagon employees are not only potentially illegal, but also pose a significant threat to national security and global stability. It's essential to prioritize the safety and well-being of the American people and the world at large by opposing these firings and promoting fact-based decision-making. TASS, Russian TASS, is a Russian state-owned news agency founded in 1904. It's one of the largest and most influential news agencies in Russia, providing news coverage to media outlets, governments, and organizations worldwide. However, TASS has been criticized for its role in disseminating propaganda and disinformation on behalf of the Russian government. During the Soviet era, TASS was a primary tool for spreading communist ideology and propaganda. Today, TASS continues to be a key player in Russia's propaganda efforts, often promoting Kremlin-friendly narratives and suppressing dissenting voices. TASS has been accused of, number one, spreading disinformation. TASS has been known to publish false or misleading information, often to further Russian interests or discredit opponents. Number two, promoting Kremlin propaganda. TASS frequently publishes articles and news stories that align with the Russian government's views. Sound familiar? Like Fox News? Often using loaded language and biased reporting. Number three, suppressing dissent. TASS has been accused of ignoring or downplaying news stories that are critical of the Russian government or its actions. TASS's propaganda network extends beyond its own news agency, as it often collaborates with other Russian state-controlled media outlets, such as RT, formerly Russia Today, and Sputnik. These outlets often amplify TASS's propaganda efforts, creating a coordinated and far-reaching disinformation campaign, much like we see going on today and across the globe in the right wing. So I've also seen it in Australia as well, and I'm sure it's all over. It's concerning that TASS and Russian state media propagandists were present in the Oval Office, live streaming events to Russia. This raises questions about the potential for Russian propaganda and disinformation to influence American politics and decision-making yet again. Today's incident at the Oval Office is raising eyebrows, with the TASS reporter gaining unauthorized access to a meeting between President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky. The Trump administration's response has been puzzling, with officials claiming that they had no idea how the TASS reporter got in, despite the fact that access to the Oval Office is strictly controlled. This lack of transparency and accountability is concerning, especially given the sensitive nature of the meeting. The fact that the TASS reporter was removed once their presence was discovered doesn't alleviate the concerns about security and press access policies. In fact, it is more rather that they were called out. It's worth noting that this incident comes on the heels of the Trump administration's new policies restricting media access to the Oval Office. These changes have been met with criticism from major news outlets who argue that they undermine the principles of a free press. The Trump administration's handling of this situation has been characterized as incompetent, with some questioning whether the administration is being truthful about its role in allowing the TASS reporter access. Ultimately, this incident highlights the need for greater transparency and accountability in the Trump administration's handling of press access and security protocols. The Associated Press, AP, is suing the Trump administration after its reporters were barred from covering the White House events, including access to the Oval Office and Air Force One. The lawsuit claims the restrictions violate First and Fifth Amendment protections and were imposed in retaliation for the AP's refusal to adopt the administration's use of Gulf of America instead of Gulf of Mexico, which is the proper name that it's had for many, many, many moons. The White House defended the decision, saying that the press access is at the president's discretion and doesn't constitute a constitutional right. However, other news organizations, including conservative, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, and even Fox News, have signed a letter urging the administration to reverse its course. This move is part of a broader pattern of restricting press access and undermining journalistic independence. while also granting access to the propagandists that want to spin narrative and lies. The Trump administration has been criticized for its hostile approach to the media as well, and this latest development has sparked concerns about the erosion of press freedom. Trump's decision to bar U.S. press from the Oval Office while allowing Russian media like TASS to enter is highly concerning. This move has been criticized by former government officials, including Colin H. Cowell, the former National Security Advisor to President Joe Biden. Cowell questioned the wisdom of allowing photographers to bring equipment into the president's office, citing potential national security risks. This incident is particularly troubling given the context of the meeting, which was with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak, a key figure in the FBI's probe into the administration possible collusion with Russia by allowing Russian media to photograph the meeting while excluding the U.S. press. Trump's administration raised eyebrows and sparked concerns about transparency once again and potential bias. It's worth noting that this isn't the first time Trump's administration has been accused of cozying up to Russian media while restricting access to the U.S. press. This pattern of behavior has led many to question the administration's commitment to transparency and press freedom, as well as America First. Pam Bondi, the U.S. Attorney General, or as she likes to think and Trump likes to think, Trump's personal lawyer, as he stalked his DOJ with his personal lawyers. Pam Bondi, the U.S. Attorney General, has been at the center of a controversy lately. On her first day, count it, first day in office, she issued a directive that could allow Justice Department lawyers to be fired if they refuse to advance legal arguments on behalf of President Donald Trump's administration. But that's not all. Pam Bondi has also taken steps on the first day to reverse sanctions on Russia. She disbanded an interagency group that was tasked with tracking Russian business assets abroad and preventing the circumvention of sanctions against Russia. Additionally, Pam Bondi directed prosecutors to scale back the use of laws designed to counter foreign influence in the United States, which had been used in cases against Trump associates. She also plans to launch an effort to review criminal and civil cases brought against Trump while he was out of office. What? These moves have raised concerns about the politicization of the Justice Department, the potential for Trump's administration to exert an undue influence over the legal system, which, by the way, would undermine the rule of law. Pam Bondi's first days as U.S. Attorney General have been marred by controversy, with many criticizing her close ties to President Trump and her lobbying work on behalf of foreign interests. Bondi's confirmation as Attorney General was met by opposition from Democrats who pointed to her history of lobbying for companies like Qatar and Kuwait, as well as her involvement in Trump's 2020 impeachment trial. Since taking office, Bondi has not publicly announced any reversals of sanctions on Russia. However, behind the scenes, she has been busy, including her actions the very first day at dismantling the agencies holding Putin and our adversaries accountable, which, along with her close relationship with Trump and her previous lobbying work, have raised concerns about her potential biases towards Russian interests. It's worth noting that Bondi's role as Attorney General is to uphold the law and protect American interests, not to advance the interests of foreign powers or promote partisan agendas. It's an abuse of her constitutional oath. Her actions and decisions will be closely scrutinized in the coming days and weeks. The shocking confrontation between Trump, Vance, and Zelensky at the White House. By the way, while Marco Rubio sat watching like a petulant child, has sparked widespread outrage and concern. The meeting, intended to discuss a potential minerals deal, quickly escalated into a heated argument, with Trump and Vance verbally attacking Zelensky. This disturbing display of aggression and disrespect towards a visiting head of state is unprecedented in U.S. history. The fact that Trump and Vance chose to berate Zelensky in front of cameras and then tried to manipulate the moment and tried to twist it around as if he was the one doing that very thing, rather than engaging in constructive dialogue, raises serious questions about their leadership or lack of and diplomatic skills. Watch this unhinged clip with Rachel Maddow where she breaks this all down.
Republicans are having a hard time with this. They try to move on to the next question. They express annoyance with their own constituents for asking about it. They get brusque and short in their answers. Or, like Senator Lisa Murkowski, they just purport to be really perplexed, really confused, really scratching my head. They have a hard time with this. All the Republicans do, especially the guy at the top.
You just mentioned Putin, though, and this has been this controversy of the past week. Can you say yes or no whether you have talked to Vladimir Putin since you stopped being president?
Well, I don't comment on that. If I have a relationship, I don't talk about that.
No,
I don't talk about that.
You talk about talking to Netanyahu.
I don't talk about that. I don't ever say. Why don't you talk about it? I don't ever say about, why not? What does that mean? I mean, that was right before the election. But it continued after the election. And people get so mad when I play this tape. People get very angry with me when I play this tape. And, you know, honestly, bring it on. Makes me appreciate it all the more because clearly, at least it strikes a nerve. Watch.
Have you talked to President Putin?
No, I have not.
You haven't talked to President Putin since you've been elected?
No. Well, I don't want to say that, but I haven't spoken to him recently.
So you've spoken to President Putin since you've been elected?
I don't want to say that. I don't want to say anything about that.
Are you going to be talking to Vladimir Putin?
Who?
Have you spoken to him?
I don't want to say.
So you've already spoken to Vladimir Putin?
I don't want to say that.
I don't want to say. I don't want to say. I can't say. Why can't you say? Why can't you say? What precludes you from saying? Listen, it's Friday night. Let's just do this. Let's just cut to the chase here. Let's do a little look-see at the landscape to see why exactly it is so hard for Republicans to deal with this topic. What exactly is so hard for Republicans to talk about? What exactly is it that we are doing, up to and including switching sides in a war? But it's not limited to that. It's all things that don't seem like good news for the United States. That makes them particularly hard to talk about. But nevertheless, with Donald Trump back in the White House, we keep doing these things relentlessly and urgently, and they all cut in the same direction. And it's really hard for Republicans to explain because of what it obviously means. It's clear why they do not want to talk about this stuff, and it gets all the more clear when you just line this stuff up. Let me show you what I mean. Here's one. Donald Trump's hand-picked attorney general. She gets sworn in to lead the U.S. Justice Department. On her first day on the job, what is the first thing she does? Headline: U.S. cuts task forces on foreign influence and Russian sanctions. Quote, in a memo sent to staff Wednesday, U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi revealed she had disbanded the Foreign Influence Task Force, a unit dedicated to investigating violations of the Foreign Agents Registration Act. Bondi did not elaborate, but figures on the Republican Party's conspiratorial far right have accused the government of abusing FARA to unfairly target political operatives, like Paul Manafort, Trump's 2016 campaign chair, who was indicted in a probe into Russian influence in that year's U.S. election. Also on Wednesday, the day of her swearing in, Bondi disbanded Task Force Klepto Capture, an initiative started in 2022 to enforce sanctions against Russia. Who's all that good for? Shutting down the Foreign Influence Task Force, shutting down enforcement of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, and getting rid of the task force that enforces sanctions against Russia. Who are all those things good for? Why'd we do those things? And so urgently, her first day on the job. Here's another one, which happened that same day. Quote, in a little notice directive on her first day in office, Attorney General Pam Bondi ordered a halt to a years-old federal law enforcement effort to combat secret influence campaigns by China, Russia, and other adversaries that try to curry favor and sow chaos in American politics. Buried on the fourth page of one of 14 policy memos Bondi issued Wednesday, the order disbands the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force. Last year, Justice Department prosecutors and FBI agents exposed an alleged scheme in which Russia-backed media funneled $10 million to a conservative U.S. media company that hired prominent right-wing influencers. Here's how the New York Times bannered that one bluntly. Quote, Trump dismantles government fight against foreign influence operations. Dozens of employees who had been working to fight foreign interference in U.S. elections have been reassigned or forced out. That includes not only the FBI, but also CISA, the cybersecurity division at Homeland Security, which we soon learned the president's top campaign donor had installed a 19-year-old operative who reportedly personally operates websites in Russia and who has been associated with multiple criminal cyber hacking gangs. That's who the president's top campaign donor installed at CISA, giving him full access to systems and data at the U.S. government cybersecurity agency. A 19-year-old kid with ties to Russia and cybercrime. Who's that good for? How do you explain to your constituents who that's good for and why we are doing that as a country? And what else? What else is hard to explain to ye olde constituents when it comes to that radical switch in the U.S. government that Lisa Murkowski described? How about this? Headline, CIA plans largest mass firing in nearly 50 years. Well, that's good for someone. Who's that good for? That came right after this. Oh, Trump's new hand-picked CIA director sent a list of CIA employees to the White House in an unclassified email. Quote, current officials confirm that the CIA had sent the names of employees to the Office of Personnel Management, complying with an executive order signed by President Trump. Senator Mark Warner, top Democrat on the Intelligence Committee, wrote that the sharing of the officers' names was a, quote, disastrous national security development. One former agency officer called the reporting of the names in an unclassified email a, quote, counterintelligence disaster. Ah, yes, a disaster for the United States and for U.S. intelligence in particular. But very good news for someone. Hey, speaking of things that ought to be classified, headline, how Trump's security clearances order could make the U.S. vulnerable. The plan to give temporary security clearances without background checks opens the door to breaches and espionage, experts say. Giving out security clearances without background checks that look for things like, criminal entanglements, lots of debt, anything that they could blackmail you over, or any contacts with foreign governments. To make sure that you're not, secretly working for, we're not doing the background checks anymore. Trump just has ordered that the classified material be made available to whoever he says with no checks. That doesn't seem like good news for the United States. But again, it's good news for someone. How about when they decided that the first agency they would destroy would be USAID? Who cheered the loudest for that? Russia welcomes USAID cuts, calls agency machine for interfering. Yeah, it was fantastic news for someone. No one was seen to benefit more or to be more loudly cheering it on than Vladimir Putin. And that was before the specific news confirmed today that among the projects Trump is explicitly and specifically turning off right now, this week, is the program by which the U.S. helps Ukraine keep its electric grid up and running. even though Russia has repeatedly targeted that electric grid throughout the war. Because Russia's idea of how it wants to win the unprovoked war it declared on our ally is to make the civilian population, including kids and the elderly and hospital patients and everyone, their best idea for how to prosecute that war is to cause them to freeze to death by bombing the electric grid in February. So more than any other evident targeting, they have targeted the electric grid that serves the civilian population in Ukraine. It is the United States that has helped Ukraine masterfully keep the power grid up despite those repeated onslaughts by Russia. Until this week, when Trump just cut it off, which is good news for someone, right? President dressed up the defense secretary he handpicked off the cast of the Fox and Friends weekend show, put him in a bright blue suit, and sent him to Europe, where he volunteered, unasked, that Ukraine can't be expected to keep all of its own territory. He said that would be, quote, unrealistic. It would be, quote, unrealistic to not let Russia take parts of Ukraine. He then volunteered, unasked, that Ukraine will not be allowed to join NATO. Now we've got pro-Trump Republican senators saying, yeah, not just Ukraine won't be allowed in NATO, we ought to get out of NATO too, which of course would collapse NATO. Who would that most benefit? For whom would that be really, really good news? Donald Trump says, let's let Russia back into the G7. Donald Trump is reportedly preparing right now for his own big in-person summit with Vladimir Putin. Donald Trump already started high-level meetings between the Russian and U.S. governments, including an inexplicable 3.5-hour meeting specifically between the president's real estate friend and Vladimir Putin himself. Steve Witkoff came back from that meeting and how'd that go? Went pretty well for someone. Headline, parroting Putin and Trump, Witkoff says Russia was provoked into invading Ukraine. Headline, Trump envoy can't name a single concession Russia will make in peace deal. What does it seem like is going on here? Imagine if a foreign adversary, imagine if the Putin government somehow could just do a thought experiment. Imagine they could somehow exert control or influence over the government of the United States. What do you think the Putin government would have the U.S. government do if he could control it? What kind of headlines would you expect to see about the operations of our government under that kind of a scenario? And what would you expect the news out of the Oval Office and the White House to look like on a day like today?
The international community has been quick to condemn Trump's behavior, with many European leaders rallying around Zelensky and expressing support for Ukraine's sovereignty. In contrast, Russian officials have praised Trump's actions, with Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova suggesting that Trump and Vance showed restraint by not physically assaulting Zelensky. Like, what the fuck? First of all, they wouldn't physically assault him, and they would have been dealt with. What are they gonna jump him? I mean, you know what? We need to put up a picture. Miss Davenport. The implications of this incident are far-reaching, with many experts warning that it could damage U.S. relationships with European allies and embolden Russian aggression in the region. Trump and Vance's behavior was not only deplorable and pathetic, but also extremely dangerous and troubled. Their actions have undermined the dignity of the United States presidency and raised concerns about their fitness for office. It's about time for a 25th Amendment or impeachment Impeachment is a constitutional process that allows Congress to remove the president, vice president, and other civil officers from office for treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Given the concerns raised about Trump and J.D. Vance and Mike Johnson, let's break down the impeachment process and how it might apply to these individuals. Grounds for impeachment. Impeachment is not just about removing someone from office, it's also about holding them accountable for their actions. The Constitution outlines two specific grounds for impeachment: treason and bribery. However, the phrase high crimes and misdemeanors is more open-ended, allowing Congress to consider a broader range of offenses. Impeachment process. The impeachment process typically begins in the House of Representatives. The only problem is that the Republicans have control right now of the House and the Senate, and they won't do the right thing. Where a resolution is introduced, the resolution is then introduced in the House, outlining the articles of impeachment. The House Judiciary Committee then holds hearings to gather evidence and testimony. If the committee votes to recommend articles of impeachment, the full House debates and votes on them. If a simple majority votes in favor, the articles are sent to the Senate for a trial. Mike Johnson's actions. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson has forfeited his right as Speaker of the House and harmed the American people in the process, and violated his oath of office. Johnson's actions are alarming. From the Nazi rally at Madison Square Garden, Trump announced that he and Mike Johnson had a little secret, which he had to rub in the faces of the American people.
And Speaker Mike Johnson is here, and he's doing a great job. It's not easy when you have a majority of 3. But he's done a great job, and he's going to continue to do a great job, and we like him. He's a terrific person. I watched him just totally decapitate a fake reporter on NBC, Meet the Fake Press. What he did to her was, I think that probably she'll never be the same. Nobody would know. Look at him, such a nice-looking guy, just that little beautiful face with the glasses. Got the little glasses. Everyone says, oh, he's so nice. He's such a nice person. He's not a nice person. He's not nice at all, right, Matt? But great job. We think he's great. And he's going to be around for a long time, I predict. We have a senator here who I love, Senator Tommy Tuberville. And he's from a great place, Alabama. I love Alabama. I'm up in Alabama by 49 points. 49 points. We're up by a lot in a lot of different places, but it's a great place, and thank you, Tommy. And all of our other great congressmen. We have so many, if I ever named them, we're going to be up here a long time. So they're going to be angry. They won't speak to me for probably a month or so, but it'll calm down after that. Right, Matt Gaetz? It'll calm down. It'll calm down. But we have great, great people. And they're really doing a job, and we're going to turn this country around. You know, with me, we got to get the congressmen elected, and we got to get the senators elected, because we can take the Senate pretty easily. And I think with our little secret, we're going to do really well with the House, right? Our little secret is having a big impact. He and I have a secret. We'll tell you what it is when the race is over.
And it's clear that Mike Johnson has violated his constitutional oath and engaged in unethical behavior. Mike Johnson's actions have also raised concerns about voter suppression and the erosion of democratic principles. The use of Jim Crow laws and other tactics to restrict voting rights is a serious issue that affects marginalized communities. Some of these tactics used to suppress votes include gerrymandering, manipulating electoral district boundaries to favor one party over another, voter ID requirements, implementing strict ID laws that disenfranchise marginalized communities, polling place closures, closing polling stations in areas with high minority populations, making it harder for them to vote, denying felons the right to vote, restricting the voting rights of people with felony convictions, disproportionately affecting minority communities. These tactics undermine the principles of democracy and perpetuate systemic inequality. It's essential to hold elected officials accountable for their actions and ensure that voting rights are protected for all citizens. Mike Johnson's inaction amidst concerns over Trump's impact on democracy has raised alarms, particularly among Democrats like Kamala Harris. Project 2025, a comprehensive policy agenda crafted by the Heritage Foundation, has been a focal point of these concerns. Key aspects of Project 2025 include dismantling the administrative state. The project aims to downsize the federal government and restructure its functions, primarily to help benefit billionaires. Tax policy proposes a two-rate individual tax system of 15% and 30%, reducing the corporate tax rate from 21% to 18%, and cutting the capital gains tax. Immigration seeks to reinstate Trump-era immigration policies and tighten asylum requirements and reduce refugee emissions. They've already fired a lot of the judges that even do the asylums, literally grinding it to a halt. Social welfare programs proposes work requirements for Medicaid beneficiaries, tightening work requirements for SNAP recipients, and changing eligibility requirements for TANF. These policies have sparked concerns about their potential impact on democracy, social welfare, and the economy. While Trump has distanced himself from Project 2025, its implementation could have far-reaching consequences. And since day one, he's already implemented over 1/3 of the Project 2025 policies at this point. Trump's impeachment history, it's worth noting that Donald Trump has already been impeached twice by the House of Representatives. The first impeachment in 2019 was related to his dealings with Ukraine, while the second impeachment in 2021 was related to his role in the attempted coup and insurrection on our capital and democracy. However, when it came time to hold him accountable, the Republican Party, that seems to be soulless and spineless, failed to act and hold Trump accountable. And then the Supreme Court drugged things out to rig the system and embolden a fascist movement. They own this, and we must stop them. Next steps. If you believe that Trump, J.D. Vance, and Mike Johnson have committed impeachable offenses, which I strongly do, you can contact your representatives in Congress, express your concerns, get on that phone and bug them. You can also stay informed about ongoing investigations and impeachment proceedings through reputable news sources like our own. A call to action. As we conclude today's discussion, remember that knowledge is power. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and let's empower each other to create positive change. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and share our content to support our mission in promoting fact-based information and fact-checking the propaganda and Putin's puppet. Thank you for watching till the end. If you did watch till the end, please drop a light bulb in the comments so I know you watched till the end. Thank you very much, and be kind to yourself and be kind to others. Thank you.